1 second. All right, welcome everyone. Holding by the book of Leviticus chapter 16. Again, want to welcome everyone. Holding by the book of Leviticus chapter 16. We're in verse 25. Speaking about Yom Kippur and the service of the high priests of the Kohen Gadol. And we mentioned last week, spoke about immersing. Every time he changed his clothes from golden clothes to linen clothes and vice versa, he had to immerse, right? We spoke about that. We spoke about the fact that mitzvahs need preparation, right? We spoke quite a bit about that last week. So here the Torah tells me, again, book of Leviticus chapter 16, verse 25. Torah says, "V'eschelev hachatas yaktir amizbech." The Torah says over here that the fat of the sin offering he shall burn on the altar, on the mizbeach. So we do understand there were two sacrifices, right? We spoke quite a bit about. One is the sacrifice atones for the high priest and the family of the high priest, and the other atones for the sake of the Jewish people. Right? Atones for the sake of the Jewish people. So here he's putting up the fats of the sin offering. It's going to get burnt. It's going to get burnt on the altar. Now, come along, Rashi over here. Rashi explains, what does it mean? What does it mean, the fat of the sin offering? Now, there are sacrifices where some of it, we saw before, some of it is all burnt up. We call that an ola, a burnt offering, that you don't get any benefit from, right? The whole thing gets burnt up. Many bring down that what's the purpose of having it all burned up? What's coming to atone for, right? Let's say, or what's the purpose of it? And that is against the person's thoughts. In other words, the person had, negative thoughts, bad thoughts, whatever it is, sinful thoughts, let's say, that atones, right? This burnt offering atones. So here, or I'd say atones for that. So here they bring a sin offering, right? The high priest has to bring a sin offering, right? Certainly, as an offering for atonement, and the fat goes up, right? The fat's going to get burnt, right? Take the fat of the sin offering and burn it on the altar. Now, come along, Rashi. What does that mean exactly? Why the fats of the sin offering? So here Rashi says, and he explains the specified parts of the bull and the he-goats, i.e. different parts. We'll try and keep it clean here. Won't get anyone sick here. Parts which the Torah says must be burnt on the altar. Right? There are times where a sacrifice is going to be given. And when the sacrifice is given, certain things need to be burnt. Right? There might be certain parts that need to be burnt on the altar. Now, interesting, what does the Torah say? Torah says, the eighth chelev hachata, right? The fat of the sin offering. Now, chatas, right, grammatically, it's singular. It's not in plural, right? It's a sin offering. Now, if it's singular, then maybe it only refers to one offering, right? But here, one of the commentaries of Rashi explains, it refers both to the bull and the he-goats for both offerings, since they are both sin offerings, right? You got the goats, the he-goat's going to be used as a sin offering. And you got a bull, we said previously. Bull's going to be used also as a sin offering. But interesting enough, what's the issue grammatically? Right? What's the issue grammatically over here? The issue grammatically is the fact that it's singular. What should it have said? If you wanted to mention both, cover both, you would say chatos. You would say sin offerings, right? Or sins, right? In the plural. Here, it's used in singular. In order to tell me, Rashi says, or one of the commentaries explains, it's going on both. Going on both offerings, right? It's going on the bull, going on the he-goat. That's one thing. Then Rashi says, he shall burn it on the altar. Now, which altar? See, Torah doesn't tell me. Torah very sneaky over here. Torah doesn't tell me, right? That's why we need oral law, because there's no explanation. It doesn't tell me where, which altar, number of altars over here. So Rashi says it's going on the outer altar. Why? Maybe it should go on the inner one. Why specifically on the outer one? Because on the inner one, the inner altar, the Torah says in Exodus chapter 30, verse 9, what does the Torah tell me? It says over there, you shall not bring up on it for an incense, right? Or an olah offering, a burnt offering, or meal offering. Now, what's Rashi explaining over here? Rashi is explaining why it would not be brought on the inner altar. Right? So even though the blood itself, as the Torah tells me in Exodus chapter 30, verse 9, where does the blood of sin offerings go? They go on the altar of gold. Right? The Mizbeach Hazav, the altar of gold. Where was the altar of gold? Right? If I have my chalkboard up here, draw a picture of the temple and exactly where the altar was. Which we're not going to do, but we can only imagine. It was inside the sanctuary. And parts of the offerings cannot be burned on it. Right? Simple explanation here. Right? According to Rashi, cannot burn these offerings. Parts of those offerings in that place. So how does Rashi understand? Rashi understands over here this olah offering again means a burnt offering. This burnt offering, right? This burnt offering of the verse quoted is representative of all animal offerings. Right? That's how Rashi's learning. Right? In other words, we're gonna learn out over here. For all other offerings, that the fats of any other offering that was going to be used would not be put there. Not allowed to be put there. How do I know? I got internal logic. Internal logic over here means the fact that since the Torah said before in the book of Exodus, chapter 30, verse 9, right? Anyone can go look it up. Just like the Torah over there says that we have internal logic, because Rashi tells me that on the inner altar, you don't bring up any foreign incense or burnt offering or meal offering. Right? There's different types of offerings, which we've spoken about. But the point over here is a burnt offering doesn't go there. Right? If a burnt offering doesn't go there, so then the parts, right? Then the parts are not going to go there. Right? Parts are not going to go there. So the parts are not going to go there. If the parts are not going to go there, so what? So you're going to tell me now, Rashi says, where's Rashi know it? Right? Why does Rashi say, that's the whole point here. Why does Rashi say it's going on the outer altar? There's an inner altar, right? There's an altar that's further in, right in the temple, in the Mishkan, tabernacle, before it became the temple, or whatever. Right? So Rashi already knows because we have another verse. And the other verse says, Exodus chapter 3, verse 9, this olah offering, this burnt offering, is not going on the outer altar. It's not going on that outer altar. So if that's true, how do I know? Because it says only going on the inner one. Right? That we said before. Right? So just an interesting, side point. you look at Rashi or any other commentators, got to understand, okay, what does the verse say? What does the verse tell me? And now I got to see what it means. I got to see, other contradictions. Was it something brought up before? Is it something that's not clear, right? That's convoluted? Let's say, whatever the case may be. So if I have another verse, I got to explain why it applies, why it doesn't apply, why maybe there's a contradiction, etc. But if we look at it at face value, we mentioned this many times. If you look at the Torah at face value, there are things that need explanation. Torah doesn't tell me. Right now, the Torah also assumes you know other things, but other verses, and all that. But at the same time, you have to remember the Torah is a law book. So if the Torah is a law book, it does not necessarily give me reasons for anything. Torah tell me do this, don't do that, put this up, take this down. Sometimes things make more sense. Some things make, less sense. Some things are totally incomprehensible. Probably about 80% of the Torah probably doesn't make logical sense. And even the logic, we have to understand, right? So, I've heard many people say, just throw this out there, I've heard many people say, well, that doesn't resonate with me. I don't fit my world agenda. Okay. What do I care what someone's world agenda is, right? God talking, not me. God's going to say, what do I care? I told you, this is what you have to do. I passed it down to Moses. Moses gave it to us. This is our obligation, right? Shut up and eat the matzah. This is what you got to do. This is your obligation. 100% your obligation. Doesn't mean we don't have to understand it. Doesn't mean it's just a leap of faith. That's for Christians, right? Certainly not for us, right? But at the same time, we got to understand. I got to understand to the best of my ability. I got a problem here, right? Rashi's addressing the problem, right? Rashi's explaining why it's talking about in one place and not another, because I have internal logic, not oral law, right? People are going to jump up and down and say, oh, that's oral law. No oral law over here. Rashi explains because I got a problem with the other verse. It cannot be going on the only other place it can go is on the inner altar. So if it can only go on the inner altar, why not? Why don't we address that? Rashi says, why not? Because the next chapter 30, verse 9 tells me, right? It tells me over there, you're not going to bring this Ola offering, this burnt offering in any of its parts. You're never going to bring on the inner altar. So therefore, by process of deduction, if it's not the inner altar, which altar would it be? Right? Outer altar. That's where it would be. Right? That's what Rashi is coming to, Rashi is coming to explain. But again, many times the Torah will say something. And if I don't know other information, you look at it face value, you say, very nice. Okay, Torah's giving me information. Right? But if I know other information, I know other verses. If I know other verses, then you're going to say, what's going on? Maybe it's a contradiction, maybe it's not. And if it is a contradiction, how do we answer up? Right? So explains Rashi over here. So that is verse 25. That's verse 25. Now comes verse 26. And verse 26 says, Hamishaleach es asir la'azazel, Yikabis begadov, Berachas es bitzaro b'mayim, Acharechen yavo el ha'machane. Now, comes along verse 26. Verse 26 tells me, the one who dispatched the goat to Azazel is going to send it out to the desert, right? That desert's going to eat it up and destroy it, however it gets destroyed, right? Which we've spoken about. Because it can't be, it's giving to another deity, right? We explained that before. Azazel cannot be another deity, right? What it sounds like, it sounds like you're giving it to somebody or to something, to some entity or something like that, right? The Rabbeinu B'chai, when we spoke about this at the very beginning of chapter 16, you have to go through, hours and hours to get back there, right? But the point is that according to Rabbeinu B'chai, others say the same thing, that if you would tell me it's going to a certain, I don't know, a person or an entity, let's say better, like an entity or some sort of deity, it can't be. It cannot be. Why not? That's idolatry. That's total idolatry. first of the 13 principles of the Rambam of Maimonides is God is absolute. If God is absolute, guess what? There is no other deity, right? Otherwise, God wouldn't be absolute. God wouldn't be absolute over here, right? So there'd be a problem, right? There would be an inherent problem over here. So, so here it says the one who dispatched the ego does immerse his clothing, right? He has to wash his clothing, immerse himself in the water, i.e., he has to go to the mikveh. He has to immerse himself in water. Thereafter, he may enter the camp. In other words, once he's done this, what happens? He's got to wash his clothing. His clothing becomes impure. He himself becomes impure, has to go to the mikveh. And because he has to go to the mikveh, until that happens, he cannot at all, right? He cannot at all go into the camp, right? That he's not going to be allowed to do, right? 100%, he's not going to be allowed. He's not going to be allowed, right? He's not going to be allowed over here to do that, right? So explains the Torah, right? That's what the Torah tells us. Now comes along the Or Chaim HaKadosh. Or Chaim HaKadosh, more than 100 years ago, right? Great Kabbalist explains like this. He says we have to understand what is this Azazel, right? Now we're going to go back. Trying to understand what this Azazel is. So he says, comes along, our rabbis tell us in Yuma 67b, what are they? The word Azazel is a mixture of words, right? First of all, it says, Pirshu Eiz Vakasha. Eiz, right? What does Eiz mean? It means strong, hard, right? Like hard earth. Vikashe. Kashe means it's hard, right? It's strong, it's hard. So comes along the Or Chaim HaKadosh. And the Or Chaim over here says like this. He says that's what it means, right? That's what it represents over here. And he says there are a lot of drushes. There are many explanations, many sermons over here to explain what the word Azazel means. Right? A lot of explanation. Whatever we spoke about it. It's for none of them. But he says, nonetheless, even though there are a lot of explanations, he says, I don't like them. Okay? If you're a Kabbalist, you can knock out, a lot of these other explanations. They don't sit right with him. And he says, I don't like them. So I don't like what they say. They're not explaining well, so to speak. So here, the Or Chaim HaKadosh says, and my eyes were open to the people of truth, and he explains something we saw, chapter 7, verse 37. So he says, chapter 7, verse 37, really the end of the parsha, really the end of the chapter. And it says over there, Oisa Torah, Oila, La Mincha, V'Lachatas, V'La'asham, V'La'Miluyim, Ozeh V'Chashlam. So over there it says, this is the law of the burnt offering, the mincha offering, sin offering, other sin offering, and sacrifice of a shlomim, right? Also another type of offering. So after going through all the details of all these different offerings, says these are the laws, right? Zois HaTorah, right? This is the law. This is the law of all these different sacrifices. Or Chaim HaKadosh says over there. It says over there. I want to explain what the rabbis of truth right? The people of truth, what they say. What does he say? He says, what's the purpose of Torah? What's the purpose? Why do we keep Torah mitzvahs? You're going to say draw close to God. True. Right? That's definitely true. But he says the whole purpose of us learning Torah really says asek Torah. What does asek mean? Like a business, right? We make the blessing when we wake up in the morning. Jews make the blessing over the Torah, all right, before they go to synagogue or when they're in synagogue. And the blessing is, blessed are you, God, or God's Lord of all blessing, Hashem, the Lord our God, who commanded us to work, to toil in Torah. Doesn't say to learn Torah, right? Does not say lilmod Torah, right? What do we say? We say la'asok b'divrei Torah. That when we learn Torah, it should be like a business. If someone works in a business 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, that's all they think of, right? Pretty much. You know, how to make more money, do this, do that, do the other thing, right? So Torah to us has to be like a business. To learn it as much as we can, like we would a business. So he said, so what's the essence of Torah? He says that's to take out or to clarify the nitoitse HaKedush. I'm going to make this relatively simple. Not going to deepen Kabbalah here. But he says, what's the nitzoitz? The spark every Jew has. Now, what about non-Jews? Non-Jews have the spark. They have this spark of holiness. No, right? In general, they don't. But, and I guess there's always a but, and that is that if a non-Jew wants to go through conversion, then it must be, now I'll say why in a second, but it must be that they had that spark of a Jew, meaning that their soul was on Mount Sinai when the Torah was given. So what happened? Why didn't that soul stay Jewish? Okay, this is Kabbalah 101, 101a, intermarriage assimilation. Right? At some point, that soul became not Jewish. But now, the soul is reconnecting, that spark comes back, and that soul wants to reconnect and want to convert. Either they'll end up converting or not, or they'll stay in Noahide, whatever the case is, right? But logically speaking, any non-Jew interested in conversion makes no sense rationally. Why? Because you tell me, come on, most people interested in conversion come out of the church. And they found the church a bunch of lies, total bunch of lies. So now that they know that the New Testament, quote unquote, is built on what? The Old Testament, i.e. the Torah, now I got to look into the Torah. Now I have to see what the Torah says. What are my obligations? Do I have an obligation to convert as a non-Jew? Nope. They want to stay in Noahide, they're certainly allowed to keep the 7 laws. Or there are 50 laws, 60 laws, 7 laws are an umbrella, right? What non-Jews have to keep, they have a portion of the world to come. Regardless, they can make a choice either way. But the fact that someone wants to convert, now why do I say it's not logical? Because, when I was growing up, so I heard of a sukkah, right? I heard of a lulav, ate matzah on Passover, right? Well, little Hanukkah menorah. So some people never came in contact with any of this. It looks foreign, looks very strange. Imagine on the holiday of Sukkot, right? The holiday of Sukkot, when you shake the lulav, when there's an obligation during the service, shake the lulav. Imagine, a non-Jew happens to walk in the synagogue at that time, right? They happen to walk in, they see all these people. They see them with the lulav, we'll call them palm fronds, with an esrog, my lemon on steroids, right? You got your esrog, your citron, right? What else do you have? You have willows and you have myrtle leaves, right? All representative of different parts of the Jewish people, different types of people, whatever it is. We're not going to go there. The point is, they walk in a synagogue, right? We'll say, let's see, do I have any other props here? Yeah. We'll say, here's my esrog over here. Here's my lulav, right? You have them together, and you're shaking like this. You're shaking like that. You're shaking behind you. non-Jew walks in. So a Jew, will probably have seen a lulav in their life. I would say most Jews have a concept what a lulav is. Why they're shaking it that way, yeah, it's a good question. Why we do it, okay. But imagine a non-Jew comes in at that point. And a non-Jew looks and they're like, what are they doing? They're, they're taking this lulav and they're shaking it, and they got the esrog and they're shaking it. They're like, my Kesha, what in the world's going on? What they're doing, right? For them, for someone who's never seen it, doesn't matter, if seen it on YouTube, this and that, but never really seen it up close. Then you see people shaking it fervently, having whatever intention, looks strange, right? Totally looks strange. But so the question is, people will say they came to Judaism, they came to this understanding because they came out of Christianity. Most people that I come in contact with, okay, right? But still, even if that would be the case, there's something else drawing them. What's that feeling? Not just because, there are all kinds of contradictions in the New Testament. A lot of stuff doesn't make sense. Nothing's ever explained. You got to have faith, and all that. No, it's not just that. It's something, as many people have said, they can't put it into words. But I will tell you, if you go in front of a rabbinical court, you have to put it in words somehow. You have to tell them why you want to go through conversion if someone wants to convert, right? But there's something, how many times I've heard people say, it's something been drawing me. Not just it was in the family or whatever, something drawing me like a magnet. Come on, you don't have anything better to do? What if other, enjoyable things to do? Why would someone be drawn to these quote unquote archaic things? Shaking this lulav, eating, 35 pounds of matzah or 20 kilo of matzah, one shot, on Passover, etc. Why would someone be drawn to that? Right? Okay, I was born a Jew. I don't have a choice in the matter. I mean, I could keep it, could not keep it, right? We all have free choice, right? We definitely all have free choice. But the point is, a non-Jew has no connection whatsoever. That's why there are certain things that are assigned only for the Jewish people, right? I mentioned this yesterday in Pirkei Avos, in Ethics for Our Fathers. There are three things that are assigned between God and the Jewish people. What are they? One is Shabbos. One is tefillin, phylacteries that Jewish men wear every day except on Shabbos or a festival. And the third is circumcision that distinguish a Jew from a non-Jew. Now, let's take Shabbos. The Torah says clear, God says to the Jewish people, this is a covenant between me and you. Right? We declare that Shabbos day. When we make Kiddush, we declare it's a sign between God and the Jewish people. Now, how many times I heard people, quote unquote, super Noahites, whatever you want to call them, I have a right to keep Shabbos almost like a Jew. Who says? There are certain things you could tap in, maybe certain aspects that might be universal, okay. But if a non-Jew comes along and says, I'm going to keep Shabbos and I'm going to refrain from certain malachas, certain forbidden categories that you're not allowed to do on the Sabbath. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. Why? It doesn't apply to them, right? They're making up a new religion. Now, it doesn't mean they can't have a Shabbos meal. Doesn't mean maybe, maybe they can make Kiddush, maybe they can do other things. There are certain things maybe, they'd be allowed to do, within the spirit of Shabbos. But it's a sign between God and the Jewish people. It's not a sign between God and the nation, right? Make no mistake, right? That is not the case. Now, I heard someone tell me a number of years ago, someone said, come on, look at Genesis chapter 2. What does Genesis chapter 2 say? God stopped created Shabbos, gave the world Shabbos. Said, see, a non-Jew can partake, just like a Jew. There's only one problem. That was the general command of Shabbos. But when God spoke in front of 3 million people, 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60, not including women and children. So God spoke to everybody, and both the Christians and Muslims agree that happens. And they'll say we're not chosen anymore and all kinds of other things. But everyone agrees God spoke to the Jewish nation. And God said at Mount Sinai, God said to 3 million people, this is a sign between me and you. So I think it's the ultimate in chutzpah. Non-Jew comes along, in general, I'm not saying they're not in the process of conversion, a JIT, a Jew in training, but they come along and say, I want in. And I want to do this, that, and the other thing. Who gives you the rights? Your great-great-great-great-grandparents rejected Torah. Comes along the Ramchal and Derech Hashem in the way of God. Ramosha Chaim Lutzato, of blessed memory, says when Abraham came on the scene, everyone who wanted to join could join. But the Jewish people didn't get solidified to Mount Sinai. So God had mercy. God said, really, Ramchal says that really until the Dora Flaga, the generation dispersed by the Tower of Babel, he said that was it. If anyone didn't join Abraham at that point, they couldn't join. So the Ramchal goes further. The Ramchal says, God had mercy. What was God's mercy? God's mercy was he gave people the opportunity to join up until Mount Sinai. Once God came to Mount Sinai, choice is gone. The choice is gone. Now that they're interested in Judaism, what do they have to do? They have to go through conversion. That's what they have to do. They have no choice. So someone once told me, but if I would have been there in my great-great-great-great-grandparents' generation, I wouldn't have rejected the Torah, because the Medrash and the Gemara says, Tractate of Avodah Zarah 2b to 3a, God goes to all the nations. He goes to all the nations. Now, so they want the Torah. They go. So the Gemara says God went to Esav. Esav says, "What's written in the Torah?" And God says, "You're not allowed to kill." He says, "Not allowed to kill." He says, "It doesn't say in the Torah that I'm going to live by the sword." He says, "That's my job." No, not interested. God goes to Yishmael, goes to the Muslims, right? He says, you want the Torah? Say what's written in it. He says you can't steal. What do you mean? It says by Yishmael. It says he's a paradam, he's a wild man. His hand is the hand of everyone. Everyone is in the hand of him, meaning he's a thief. Bottom line, that's his character trait, right? The Torah says. So now we're not interested. So God goes to all the other nations. And God says, you want the Torah? And they all reject. God comes to Jewish people. We just read last week or 2 weeks ago. God comes to Jewish people and says, you want the Torah? He said, sure. Got a great track record. We'll take it. Do you want to know what's written in it? What did they say? Na'aseh v'nishma. They said, we will hear. They said, we will hear, and then we're going to do. Right? That's what they said. We'll hear, then we'll do. Doesn't matter what's written in it. Right? So someone said, yeah, but if I would have been that generation, but you weren't. If you weren't in that generation, now you're going to go through conversion. But my question is, why would someone want to go through conversion in the first place? So someone's going to say, I came through it intellectually. The New Testament didn't make sense, right? Totally didn't make sense. So I came to it that way. But again, when you look at all the laws, and many Jews, secular Jews say this, come on, can't eat kosher. There's no problem with trichinosis today. Someone once told me, if you eat pig, you don't cook it well enough, you get sick, but that's not why we keep kosher, right? So someone told me this, I'm eating in a restaurant, and I said, yeah, that's a good point, but we're not eating meat, we're eating a bagel. Check, mate. I'm like, we're eating a bagel. They're like, yeah, whatever, pass the salt. That was the end of that. So even Jews have issues. Secular Jews will say, come on, this is 3,500 years old, more. They don't talk to our generation. We're different. We're totally different. This is old school. We're not interested. We have our own agendas. We don't even know if we're male or female. That's what they'll say. We're not sure. Really? It's so much more advanced. So much more advanced. Leave your mind open till your brains fall on the floor. But what's the point? So the point is, a non-Jew coming into it's not just about intellectual, right? It's not just because they have these ideas and say, oh, the New Testament is false. Okay. We're not going to disagree with it, right? But for someone to be drawn, and again, many people have said this, right? It's not one, it's hundreds. Hundreds of people have said the same thing, right? They saw contradiction in that, but they were drawn. Something drew them to Judaism, right? What would I say? I'm like, come on, get a life. There's so many other probably better things to do out there. You're going to take on these laws that don't make sense, right? You're not allowed to wear shatnez, right? You're not allowed to wear wool and linen together, right? In a sweater, or a suit or different things. Come on, that makes sense. If I take kosher meat and I take kosher cheese and I put them together and I cook them, Torah says I'm not allowed to. Why? Doesn't make sense logically. If I have something that's permitted, milk is permitted, let's say, right? It's kosher and I got kosher meats, right? Ritually slaughtered meats. Both of them separate are permissible. I put them together over heat, makes it forbidden, right? The list goes on. I can be here till tomorrow, going through a whole laundry list of things that do not make sense, that do not make logical sense. So, I'm really drawn to this. People are going to ask, say, Jews ask, really? What in the world are you drawn to? Again, people say it's beautiful and you keep Shabbos and something, okay. But there are a lot of things, probably 80% or more of the Torah doesn't make sense. Logically, doesn't mean we don't have to understand it to the best of our ability. So the idea is a non-Jew's not coming at just based on their own intellectual thought, right? And how they looked into it and how they saw certain things or they heard certain things or who knows what. They're not coming into for that reason. That's part of it. That's not the whole reason. People are drawn. People are totally drawn. Why are they drawn? Right? Now, what would Kaufman say over here? This is exactly what the Or Chaim HaKadosh over here says. Right? The Or Chaim HaKadosh over here says, first of all, we're talking about clarifying the Nitzoitze LeKedush. Sorry, Nitzoitze HaKedush. The sparks of holiness. Now, sparks of holiness, what we call in Yiddish that pinto yid, the spark that's inside him. Non-Jews don't have that. They have different aspects of the soul. They don't have all the same aspects a Jew has. Without going into all that, Kabbalah 101b, right? Without all that, my question is, so here the Or Chaim HaKadosh says that when a person's learning Torah, the purpose of Torah is to clarify these spiritual sparks that fell and now are taken away. In other words, we want to gather them up. We want to put them back together. A person can have that spark, and guess what? I was speaking to someone the other day, and basically, we came to the same conclusion that when the Jews do the right thing, they're elevated, until heaven. In other words, we do the right thing, we go all the way up. We do the wrong thing, we go all the way to the ground. In other words, nothing in between. Either we're the greatest at success when it comes in spiritual terms, or God forbid the other way. Right? So now what's going on? Says Or Chaim HaKadosh. You got these sparks. That, need to be brought together. From where they were. In other words, they're out of flux, so to speak. They got messed up in a certain way. Right? They have to be brought together. This spiritual side. And he said there are two ways of looking at it. I'll try and make it simple. The first way is that there are sparks of holiness that are in all parts of the world, right? That fell in the world. For whatever reason, right? They're in different parts of the world. I will say, just as a side point, there's a whole question in the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers, I'm probably going to get there when I'm about 102 at the rate we go over here. But in the book of Numbers, the book of Numbers tells us all the different places the Jews go in the desert, right? All these different encampments. They go there, they stop, they started, they this, they that, right? All this thing, right? All these things. You're going to say, what does the Torah need to tell me? What does the Torah tell me? They need to go a roundabout way to get to the land of Israel. Okay, I understand. It was because of the sin of the spies. They could have gone straight into the land. The Messiah would have come. It didn't happen. They failed at some level in emunah and belief and faith in God, whatever. That's a whole discussion, very hard to understand. But the point, is that the Torah tells me the Jews encamped here, then they encamped there, then they went there, then they went here, then they went back, and this. Why? Why does the Torah tell me that? The Torah has to tell me location. Look at it on Waze. We'll put it in Waze, right? We'll see. Okay, they went here, they went there, they did this. What do we care? Torah does not waste time on anything. But there it tells me great detail. They went here, they went there, they did this, they did that. Why tell me that? Right? So you look a little bit deeper. Some of the commentaries say, you know why? There were certain things the Jews had to pick up in these places. What things? Weren't physical things. Definitely not physical things because there was nothing there. Right? Essentially, there wasn't that much there. So what are they picking up? What are they picking up? Sparks. Somehow, here one explanation is somehow there are these sparks that fell into the world in different places for different places. Why? So here the Or Chaim HaKadosh says, "L'siba yadu aloi," for the reason known to it. This spark got knocked off somewhere, wherever it was. Maybe it got out of its orbit. Who knows? This spark ended up in X place. It ended up somewhere. Some say, why is it telling me all the different stations that Jews had to go in the deserts? Because Torah doesn't mince any words. Torah's not going to waste any time, giving us a Waze description. They went here, they went there. So one explanation, possible explanation, is the fact that there were these different sparks. And for whatever reason, the Or Chaim HaKadosh says, the sparks were in these places, and they fell to a certain place. So if they fell to a certain place, how do you gather them? How do you gather them? You need Jewish people to go. They need to be there, for whatever reason. So, it's funny. I shouldn't say funny. It's ironic. Jews are, everywhere in the world. I think, behind the Japanese, I think they travel, more than anyone else, combined, I think, around the world. I remember I was first married. I was in Europe, different places in Europe. We saw Israelis everywhere. Remember we're in Venice. We're in Venice on a gondola. One of these small boats. Go at night. Someone's pushing it, whatever. So there, my wife and a few other people. In this boat, and this guy stands up. Imagine, it's not like such a sturdy boat. So this guy standing up, and he saw a friend of his. He's like, "It's sick." He's like waving. Meanwhile, the boat's going like this. I don't know if there are alligators in there or not. Meanwhile, the boat's going like, shaking all over. Like I yanked him down. I'm like, listen, I don't want to die over here. Just got married. Like, just sit down. You'll see him later. Whatever. But like, they're everywhere. Israelis everywhere. So anyway, so you get Jews. You get Jews in Thailand. You got Jews in Tibet. It's a trivia question. Where's the biggest Seder, Passover Seder held every year? Kathmandu. You got, Israeli backpackers, there after they do the army, want to see a little bit of mysticism. Who knows what? They go to Tibet, they go to Thailand, go to other places, etc. But they have like 2,000 people at a Seder. Had they been in Israel, probably wouldn't have gone to a Seder, right? But there, being in Tibet or wherever, okay. But anyway, so Jews are spread out according to the four corners of the earth. They're everywhere, right? Why do they have to be in Thailand? Why do they have to be in Tibet? Why do they have to be in, wherever in the middle of nowhere? So it could be there's some spiritual sparks or whatever that Jews have to be there to collect. They have to go collect them to be part of that culture for whatever reason. Right? But here the Or Chaim HaKadosh says the first reason is these spiritual, what do you call it? Sparks. These spiritual sparks are put in places. They're put in places all over. Why? Probably have to kill you to explain it. It doesn't say why. He just says for a reason known to it. So I guess the spark knows where it's going and it gets thrown somewhere. So Jews have to be in that place at some point to go get it, right? To uproot it, to bring it, whatever, do whatever they need to do with it. That's one explanation. One explanation. And he said in this concept, to those who understand, that's enough. It's very funny. In a certain way, it's very funny language over here, right? He's telling you, okay, to the reason that it's known to it, and whoever understands it, they understand it. Right? That's enough. I don't have to explain more. Right? I told him we don't have to explain anymore. Right? If I explain anymore, I'd have to kill everyone. Right? So he said, it's basically Kabbalah over here. But he said, if those who got it, got it. I don't need to say anymore. Okay. Right? That's the first explanation. And then he says the second explanation. Second explanation is, he says there are certain souls that, I guess wild souls, let's say, that's, from Adam Arishon, from the beginning of creation, from the first man, and after he sinned. And these souls, I don't know, I'm not going to say they went off. They weren't bridled, doesn't mean, they have free will. People have free will. Right? So, you have to have a soul in the body. Soul cannot exist outside of a body, right? If it wants to be in this world. Right? So, so you have these, let's say, evil souls, so to speak, that for whatever reason they're in this world, right? In whatever body, creating whatever havoc. So he said it's known that these people, whatever, spread out. They're spread out over here. And really, what should happen is, really they should be swallowed up. Right? I'm talking in spiritual terms, not necessarily physical terms. Person learns Torah. When a person learns Torah, that should have a spiritual effect on other people. Even if you don't come in contact with it. Can have a spiritual effect. Now, here in Israel, you have the greatest amount of spirituality. Right? As I would always say, it's the greatest place to live in spiritual terms, but you also have the greatest amounts of impurity at the same time. Can't have one without the other. There has to be a balance. As the Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, there has to be a balance. Right? There's a balance of good, there's a balance of evil. Now, can someone tap into evil whenever they want? Yes. Right? 100%. Can they, does God want you to tap into it? No. Not interested that you should tap into it. Right? So what's the issue? Right? What's the issue over here? So why did God create evil? So for the Christians, they got a problem. Right? They change Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. Right? Because according to them, where does evil come from? JC. Fallen angel. We don't believe in fallen angel. So we believe God created evil. Now you're going to say God's evil? No. God's definitely not evil. He allows people to choose one way or the other. You're going to say, so why did he put it in the world? If anyone can tap into it, why would he put it in the world? So what's the simple explanation? Give people free choice. Because if we would only be programmed to do the right thing, what does God need us for? He's got plants. He's got animals. He's got trees. He's got planets. He's got solar systems, galaxies. He's got all these things that are going to do his will, whatever he says. Right? So he needed somebody in creation that has the spirit of him inside, i.e., God breathed in the spirit of life. Everyone is created b'tselem Elokim, in God's image, whatever that means. But everyone's got a spark. Everyone is can turn to spirituality. Now that doesn't mean they're going to, go down the right path. People could choose spirituality, make a serious mistake, be over the avodah zarah, do idolatry, right? That's penalty. That's a problem, unless the person repents. So they could choose, to go in spiritual terms, but they choose the wrong thing. They go down the wrong path. Okay. Does God make the choice for anybody? No. Everyone can make their own choice. You can make the right choice, you make the wrong choice. The whole point is we make choices. God allows that to exist to let us choose the good and not choose the bad. Can someone tap into bad if he wants? Sure. Is that what God wants? No. Is the person going to get punished? Absolutely. But God set him up. He didn't set anyone up. God allowed it to exist. Allowed it to exist. And the fact that he allowed it to exist, if people want to tap into it, they could. But there's going to be a price. No free lunch. There's going to be a price. There's going to be a serious price to pay. Everyone's got free will. That's what he wants. He wants people to make the right choice. He wants people to do the right thing, not because they're going to fry in hell forever. Right? That's the lowest level of fear of heaven. He wants people to fear him. True. You need fear of God. Fear of God does not necessarily lead to love of God. Love of God will lead to fear of God, but you need the base. You need the base of fear, no question. But you want to serve God because you believe it's the right thing to do. And you want to serve him at the highest level, i.e., even if we don't get reward, as the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says, right? As it says in Ethics for Our Fathers. He wants us to serve at the highest level, even if there be no reward, right? Not because we're going to fry in hell forever. But why do we have this fear? Because we understand his awesomeness and the fact God is nature and God is above nature. We just read many chapters of what happened in Egypt, and God changed nature. God's above nature. One of the reasons that God, uses all these plagues against the Egyptians, because God comes to Moses and Moses seems to say, how can I go there? I can't speak, and this and that. And he complains, right? Hard to imagine. God told him, you're going to go and do it. And he's like, but I can't speak. They're never going to listen to me. Different things. But what was his real claim? What was his real claim? He looked up to heaven. He could read the stars, right? He was an astrologer par excellence. He could read the stars. And he saw, according to the stars, the Jewish people never get out. They never get out of Egypt. 100 times out of 100, they never get out. Right? You put it in a supercomputer, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 supercomputers, Jews in Egypt, they never get out. Never get out according to nature. So God says, you're right. You're right. According to nature, they won't come out. Why? Moses looks up. How did Moses know? Because he looked up and he saw an angel of God, an angel of the Jewish people. Each nation has their own guardian angel that pleads its case in front of God, in front of the heavenly court, for whatever needs it has. And God saw an angel of the Jewish people and an angel of the Egyptians intertwined like a double helix, right? Like a DNA molecule. So Moses looks up and is like, come on. The Jewish people never, ever, ever, they're never going to get out. It's never going to happen. You got to say, come on, every once in a while, in a sporting event, the underdog wins. Yeah, but this is never going to happen. This is a 0.000 chance. Never going to happen. No other nation that was enslaved by Egypt, no one ever escaped. According to nature, never happened. God says, Mo, he's like, Mo, don't worry. I'm above nature. I'll take you out above nature. And what does he do? God changed nature. Totally changed nature, all the way around, right? In order finally that the Egyptians are going to let him go, right? But if God is in charge, right? God's in charge over here. He's the one running the show, but Pharaoh himself wouldn't let him go. So after the first two, God played with him, took away his free will. The whole discussion why Pharaoh gets punished, because if God took away his free will, can't punish him. He's like using him like silly putty, right? He's playing with him. It doesn't make sense. Their entire nation got decimated. You had blood, you had frogs, you had vermin, you had wild animals, plague of darkness, you had boils, hail. Slain of the firstborn. All these things. You would think after the first couple, he said, fine, just let him go. No, God says, I'm not going to let them go. Right? He's not going to let you go. I'm going to make sure he doesn't let you go. They could have killed him. Why did his own people kill him? Overthrow him. Come on. Yeah, throughout history, you have that. Yeah, but, you have dictators being overthrown, or, army comes in, takes over different things. It happens, right? It happens a lot. Why didn't this happen? Why didn't this happen? Because God didn't want it to happen. Should have happened. His whole country's getting decimated, but that's not even the worst part. The worst part is what happens at the end. Not to mention the death of the firstborn. Right? Well, why do I say the worst part? They took out all the wealth. They took out all the wealth. So they got no trees, right? Basically, trees are destroyed, crops destroyed, one of their animals destroyed, and they take out all the wealth. All the wealth. And the Jewish people go out. But then God turns the screws even more. And he says, I can't believe we let them go. What do you mean? They totally decimated your country. They took out all your wealth. What do you mean you don't know? You don't remember? What are you, absent-minded? Right? You got dementia. All of a sudden, Pharaoh's got dementia. What happened? What happened over here? Forgot? No, he didn't forget. God turned the screws. He said, oh, we're going to run after him. I can't believe we let him go. Right? And that's the end. Right? They run after him. They go into the water. The water caves in on them. They all die. But what does God do? The Medrash says. God leaves Pharaoh alive in order to witness the entire downfall. Now, what happened to Pharaoh afterwards? Right? So the Medrash says, what happened to Pharaoh afterwards? Became the king of Nineveh. That big city in the book of Jonah. So when Jonah comes and he says, God, the Jewish people are going to destroy, if you don't repent, he gave him an opportunity to repent. Pharaoh said, okay, I got the message. I got the message. Right? They all repent, they get saved. But imagine he was the king of the world power. Right? Egypt is the world power at the time. Nobody, and I mean nobody, ever escaped. But not only did the Jewish people escape, this is all shown through papyrus and other things, proving not only they escaped, they decimated the entire country and took out all the wealth, to boot. And the Egyptians gave them all their wealth for all their hard work, everything they did. They took out all the wealth. So imagine what this country is. This country now became like Pago, like Fiji. No offense to Fiji, right? Not a world power, nothing. Stripped of everything. All their men, all their powerful men, the army gone. They got nothing. So he becomes the king of Pago, right? He becomes the king of Guam. Be the king of the Falkland Islands. For all you English out there, right? The poor little Falklands take over, right? Falkland Islands, he becomes the king. Oh, what a position. He was king of the world. King of the world. Everybody worshipped him. Got demolished. Totally demolished. Anyway, I digress here. The point is, right, back to my, hope I don't get lost in my own parable, right? Point is that God created evil. He allows them to tap in. He allows everybody to tap in. Now, can some people abuse it more? Sure. Can some people create real havoc? Yeah. But why? Because God doesn't stop them, right? Remember, evil does not run rampant as long as God doesn't want it to. If God wants crazy people to come on the scene, and wipe out, millions of people, he can do it. Evil does not go unchecked, does not go on forever. Right? I mean, Stalin killed how many? 30, 40 million of his own people. I mean, Pol Pot, got Hitler, Yamashimoy, a bunch of maniacs out there. Right? Total maniacs. So why did God allow it? Because there's judgment in different places. And God used them to do it. But then he stopped them eventually. Right? So, so then the question is, okay, why the righteous suffer? Right? Age-old question. It's what the whole book of Job, right, is all about. But the point is nothing happens for no reason. We may not understand the reason. And even if we don't understand, it's not a leap of faith. It's not a leap of faith over here because it's the ultimate chutzpah to say, well, if God is so good, so why is there evil? Right? It's a good question. Not to say that's chutzpah, right? But the chutzpah is if God's in charge of nature, right? Imagine why, I mentioned before about fear of God. What's the highest level fear of God? The fact that, he's in charge of the galaxies. The fact that he keeps the earth, on its axis, not too close, not too far away. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We'd either be incinerated, or frozen tundra like Pluto, even though Pluto got demoted, as a planet. Regardless, all these different forces going on. So imagine, we are a small, infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. We, live in a small town, in the city, in the state, country, continent, planet, galaxy. We're getting smaller, right? So we think everything revolves around us. But the Talmud says in Sanhedrin, Bishvili nivra olam, we're our own world. For me, the world was created. Each person their own world. So we think, we can do anything. Fame, right? I'm gonna live forever. No, we think we're gonna live forever, and we can do whatever. We got all the power. We got all the technological advances. And everything. But guess what? There are many things we can't do. We're not capable of doing. Right? We can't even control our own bodies. Right? Famous story. Right? I always tell. Somebody comes to a doctor and daughter's very sick. Daughter's very sick. And what happens? So the doctor is an expert, it's a world expert. And the doctor says, yeah, I can heal her, I'll do the operation, etc. So the person was religious, doctor wasn't. So the person says, B'ezrat Hashem, with the help of God. So the doctor, secular doctor, what do you mean the help of God? Right? I'm the one doing this, not, God. What does God have to do with anything? I'm the one in charge over here. So the father said, just take that back. That's heresy. It's blasphemy. How could you say such a thing? So he said, I'm not going to take it back. God has nothing to do with this. I'm the one. It's all about me. So he says, okay, I'm not letting you operate on my daughter. So the doctor laughed. He said, if I don't operate, your daughter's going to die. He says, you don't run the world. You're not in control. The doctor left. Guy walked out. Doctor left. Shortly thereafter, doctor goes to a conference. He's giving a presentation in front of 300 people. Right? It's probably before PowerPoint. Right? He's giving this presentation. In the middle of the presentation, what happens? You know what they say, you got to go when you got to go. And he ran out, totally embarrassed, because in the middle of this presentation, in front of all these doctors, he's going to run to the bathroom. So he comes back from the conference, calls up the guy, says, I want to speak to you. And the guy comes in, and says, I've been more than happy, to do the surgery, B'ezrat Hashem, with the help of God. It's like, what do you mean the help of God? You say, you don't believe in God, you don't need God, this and that. And he said, listen, I think I'm in control. I think I'm in control of so many things. You know what I learned? What I learned the hard way? I learned I can't even control my own body. I can't even control a bowel movement, right? Here I am drinking tea, even though I just spilled some of it, right? So am I going to pinpoint, is that going to have to go to the bathroom? No. And there were so many things we're not in control of. Totally not in control, right? So you look at God as being awesome in what he does, and nature, in the human body, Chovos Levavos, and Duties of the Heart speaks about this a lot, right? About how the human body functions. In the miracle, or I should say better, miracles of the human body, just how it works, in general. And, you see so many things like that. That's where when Abraham came on the scene, he was 3 or the age of 40, where he recognized there's a world of design, right? In other words, there had to be a world of design, because this world could not have been created just, through nothing, right? Just by, random explosions, different things. That's how the world created. That's where man came from. That's a little bit of a bit of a stretch, unless, you want to come on to evolution. Certainly evolution never been proven, but that's the only other alternative, right? Outside of the Torah being true, right? That's the only other alternative. But regardless, Abraham came on the scene, and he came up with this idea that there's the world of design. And, he spread it to other people. Everyone was, walking around with their God, their pocket God. Here's Bob, don't leave home without him. Everybody had their pocket gods. And he was able to convince the masses there's only one God, and there's a world of design and all this. Right? So how can people be duped? How can people not see that? People see what they want. Right? Anyone's ever read Stephen Hawking's book, A Brief History in Time. Stephen Hawking proved, or says himself, that seems to prove there's a expanding universe. We're living in an expanding universe, which is not stopping. So now, what's the obvious question? Who's keeping it expanding? How does it continue to expand? Do you want to say it happened, this big bang, not necessarily contradiction to Judaism, or to the Torah, and that left okay, but why does it keep going? So he explains that I don't have a scientific answer. I don't have a mathematical answer, but it's been proven between math and science, right? Even Einstein agreed, others agreed, that the world is expanding. The universe is expanding. Now, according to that, what did he say? So he said, it looks like I've just proven that, and I've just shown there's an expanding universe. Scientifically, I can't prove why. I don't know why. I don't think he's the greatest physicist of our day, right? Can't prove it. Okay. So at least entertain the possibility, maybe the story of creation is true. Maybe. Otherwise, you have to come on to evolution. There's nothing else, right? So what did he say? What did Einstein said? The same thing. Said the exact same thing. We'll never let the creationists ever be right. We're not going to give in to a leap of faith. Okay, so if I was there and they were both alive, I would say, Al, Steve, I said, okay, give me a scientific explanation. I'd be a little bit stubborn. I can be stubborn, right? Very stubborn, right? So I'd say, Al, Steve, give me an explanation. Give me a scientific explanation. They don't have one. I said, I'm not leaving until you give me an explanation. I don't have one. Okay. So you don't have one. He said, we'll find one, right? Just like the missing link. We'll find that missing link one day. Good luck, right? 1990s, there was a Newsweek article. The closest thing they found to the missing link was a set of teeth and a jawbone. Boy, that's pretty close. From a paramecium to a hydrant to a human. I mean, that's pretty close. Any case, they don't have proof. So I would say, if you don't have scientific proof, you can't tell me, oh, we'll find it in the future. We'll discover it. Oh, but you don't have proof. You don't have anything, right? It's just conjecture. So if you don't have proof, then you have to at least entertain the possibility that the Torah's account of Genesis, the book of Genesis, of creation, could be true. We'll never entertain that possibility. Okay, right? So I go back and say, let's try this again. Do you have any scientific proof at all? Anything? No. Mathematical proof? No. What else is out there? There's only two other explanations, potential explanations. Evolution, but that's not going to explain why the universe is expanding. And the second explanation is maybe the story of Genesis is true. No. See, there's cognitive dissonance. They're never going to listen. Why are they not going to listen? Because if they say the Torah might be true, then they're going to say, oh, but I'm a thinking person. I'm an intellectual. I'm not, it's a leap of faith. No. See, why don't Jews believe in a leap of faith? You're going to say, well, you believe the Torah is 100% true. Yeah. A lot of facts on the ground that show the Torah is true. But in next is chapter 20, verse 2, it says, Anochi Hashem Elokecho, I am the Lord your God. How do I know? God says, I'm the Lord your God. 10 commandments. First of the 10 commandments. Everybody agrees. Muslims and Christians. That's most of the know today. They agree God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, including the 10 commandments. Now, God says, I am the Lord your God, and this is what we hold. This is the mitzvah belief in God. How do we believe in God? Where's the proof? Because he took us out of Egypt. He took us out of the house of bondage. Now, the commentaries ask, I got a better proof. Why do you tell me not, he didn't take me out of the house of bondage, create the world? Isn't that greater proof? Greater proof. Why do the commentaries say that's good enough? Why does the Torah have to say God intervened in history? Which again, most people alive today would agree that happened, i.e. the exodus from Egypt, because God intervenes in history. And we have proof for that to explain in a second by creation of the world. By creation of the world, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Bereshis bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. God created the heaven and the earth. Okay, very good. God created the heaven and the earth. Who was there? Who was there? Nobody. Torah doesn't tell me anybody's there. It just says God was there. And what was God doing before? So it's brought down, busy destroying worlds. Okay, who is there? Nobody. So that can't be good enough proof. So we know that God intervenes in history. Now, someone's going to say, come on, that happened 3,500 years ago or 700 years ago, whatever it is, right? So how can that be? How do I know God intervenes in history? Because, we got about 7 weeks, give or take, to get the Passover, right? Kind of scary proposition, right? You got Purim coming up in a couple weeks, and you got, or another week, sorry. You got, and you got Passover a month away. So you got 5 weeks. Sorry, math was off. 5 weeks, right? So you got 5 weeks to Passover. Now, Torah tells me, got to Labincha by Yom Hazeh, right? That there's an obligation for a parent to tell the child the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And you're going to tell over the story. Very good, right? So on the 15th of Nisan, 15th of the month of Nisan, right? You're going to tell over the story. Family's going to get together. Anywhere you go in the world to a Jewish family, no matter how watered down it is, usually they're going to have matzah there, 3 matzahs, 4 cups of wine, cup for Elijah the prophets. You have bitter herbs or herbs, depending where you're from. And you're going to have charoset. Now, regardless of how diluted the story is, the story goes the Jews were slaves in Egypt. Right now, how does a child know that story? Because the father told them. Usually a father does not lie to a child. This generation, it might be different, right? But father doesn't normally lie to a child. Now, how's that father know the story? Because he went to his father's Seder when he was a kid. And how did his father know the story? Same thing. He went to a Seder with his father. Now, if you take 4 generations at a Passover Seder, right? You have a great-grandfather, a grandfather, father, and a son. Right. So by Orthodox Jews, a person can become a great grandfather in the 70s, right? Potentially, or even earlier, depending. Right. So now let's say great grandfather 70, he's got a son that say is 50. Right. So that son has a child that may be in their 20s, and then that son has another child. Right. Let's say that son has another child. That child's a kid, right? 5 years old, 6 years old, 8 years old, whatever it is. 4 generations. Now, if that great grandfather 70, remember he was once a little kid. So you go 65 years, right? You go 65 years, so in the middle 1900s, right? And again, you get another 4 generations. So let's say his great grandfather's 80. So go back 75 generations. Now you're back in the 1800s. Right? So how many of those generations do you need to go to get back to Mount Sinai? Right? You need 80 of those generations. Now you're going to say, now when you say 3,500 years, it sounds like a lot. When you have those type of generations, right? You have those type of generations, so you only need 80. But everyone's doing the same thing, more or less. They're telling the story, right? They're telling the same story. They're not, making it up. They're telling the same story. And why would they tell the same story if it didn't happen? Well, obviously, you had the first generation told the story to their kids. Their kids also saw it if they were alive, right? So then, the parents die. They tell the story to their kids. And they say, what happened? They said, what do you mean? God split the sea. I was there. I was a kid. Your grandfather saw it. He was older, whatever. And then those kids tell over the story to their kids. They'll say, oh, my grandfather, was there as a child. And my great-grandfather, was older, whatever. That gets passed down, right? That cannot be. It's just a big game of telephone. That got passed down because we all do the same thing. You have a mezuzah on the door. It talks about, the parchment inside. And inside Phil speaks about the coming out of Egypt. The entire evening service that we pray is all about coming out of Egypt. So you're going to say, wow, what a good thing. Maybe, this conservative rabbi came up 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and said, yeah, 7th day of Passover, he said never happened. So the Exodus from Egypt never happened. So what do you do with most of the book of Exodus? No, it's a myth. It's this. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm going to clean my house like a crazy person and eat 35 pounds of matzah, whistle Dixie after 20 minutes, after 5 minutes? Come on. I mean, it's kind of fun. You eat this matzah, you can't whistle. It's very hard to whistle because your mouth is so dry, right? But that's all part of the fun of, Passover, regardless, right? Regardless of that. So they're all doing the same thing. So, the customs are the same, more or less. So that's not a leap of faith, and much more. That's concrete, because most people have been to a Passover Seder. Most people know what it is because they've been there. Now, this generation, you can probably have a lot of people maybe haven't had a Passover Seder. Okay, that's just due to assimilation into marriage. But in general, that doesn't really matter. The point is the fact that it happened, right? That it happened and it's passed down. And Torah tells me an obligation to do it. So even if a person doesn't really know very much, and they open up a Bible, right? A secular Jew opens up a Bible, say, hey, you got to do a bincha. On that day, you got to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt. Yeah, I heard the story. I know the story, right? I read the book of Exodus. How do you know the story? How do you know it's true? How do you know it's true? So say I was at the Seder. I was at a Seder. Could have been a very secular Seder, but he was there. He knows what happened. Believes in it more, believes in it less, but Father told him the story, right? So that's something, gets passed down generation to generation. It's ironic or quote unquote lucky, which we don't believe in luck, right? But, you could say, if you go anywhere in the world on that day, Passover comes in, how did everybody get it right in every place? Boy, they got very lucky. Everyone's eating matzah. Everyone's eating bitter herbs, right? Or herbs or whatever. Everyone's got the kosher Eliyahu. They have the cup of Elijah the prophet, right? Future redemption. We commemorate the redemption coming out of Egypt and future redemption, right? For the Jewish people, that the Messiah is going to come. So if the vast majority of people who make a Seder are all doing similar things, then that would give credence. One aspect would give credence to the fact that, you got to do a bincha. There's an obligation for a parent to tell over the story. Guess what? They must have got it right because everyone's doing the same thing. Now, God doesn't change, right? Telling over the story doesn't change. You go through the plagues. You sing Dayenu, right? You tell over the story. Tell the, Manishtana. Why is this night different from all other nights? You got the 4 sons. I mean, it's all the same. I mean, some is more progressive, I would probably agree. But it doesn't matter. The story is essentially the same. So people say, oh, that's a leap of faith. What do you mean? Everyone's doing the same thing. How can that be a leap of faith? Right? I don't even have to necessarily come on to that. All you have to say is, well, isn't it true that the Muslims and the Christians both agree the Jews got the Torah on Mount Sinai? They agree. So if they agree God spoke at Mount Sinai. So they agree what happened by the splitting of the sea. They agree. We might not be chosen anymore, all these other things, okay? But they don't disagree, they don't dispute the facts. And no other religion makes such a claim. All the miracles JC did, what do you do in front of? A bunch of drunks? 3 people, 5 people? Right? Or Muhammad's flight from Mecca to Medina, how many people were there? Boy, must have, SOR, standing room only. Right? Must have been thousands of people. No. Remember, I had these Mormons, when I was in South America and I was in Chile, in Santiago, biggest group of Mormons outside of Salt Lake City. Not exactly sure why, but they asked me all kinds of questions. I answered, they didn't have answers. And finally they said, don't you believe, they found this book of Mormon, 200 years, John Smith finds it in the cave and, going on and on like this animated story. So I said, you ever read the book of Exodus, chapter 19? Chapter 18, chapter 19, Jewish people, come out of Egypt, they go through the sea, and they see God face to face at Mount Sinai, right? How many people do you think were there? Right? So I'll tell you, Torah says 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60, not including women and children. So that's about 3 million people, give or take. 2 million, 3 million, whatever it is. I'll say 2 million, we'll make it easy. 2 million people, right? Does any other so-called religion make such a claim? No. And no other religion will ever make such a claim because you need hard facts. If nobody was there, who's going to say it happened? So we have a legacy. We have a whole legacy over here. But again, right, I don't want to digress there. I just wanted to show that. But the point is, so God allowed evil to exist. That's how I get onto all this. God, and sometimes I forget what get lost in my own parable. right? That God allowed evil to exist. Does God, stop it, at any time? God stops it when he needs to, right? He's not obligated to, right? Meaning if someone taps into evil, he can allow it to happen or not allow it to happen. Now, even if, a person's been damaged or other things, we can say, well, why did that happen? Remember, a person who causes someone damage, they're liable. They're 100% liable. Unless there's onus or some sort of onus or whatever, but in general, they're liable. But the reality is, duty to the heart and the gate of faith and belief in God, right? The Chovos Levavos there says, why are you getting upset what the person did? You were supposed to be caused damage because you deserved it for whatever reason. God's using that person to get to you. So what's our first reaction? We scream at the person. But the reality is that we have proper faith and belief in God. When we scream at the person, we understand God is doing it to get to us. It's like a person hits a dog with a stick. Who does the dog go after? The stick, not the one wielding the power of the stick. So if anything happens, we should say, God, why are you doing this? What's the measure for measure? Why do we deserve such a thing? It's not random. Totally not random. Could be we've done something to deserve it. It could be our soul did something, way back when, maybe in a previous life, and now there's payback, right? And all these things come around, right? So maybe it's payback. We don't know. Essentially, we don't know. I think some things may be a little bit more obvious than others, but we live in a world of Hester b'toch Hester panim, in a world of hiddenness within hiddenness. We can't know. It's impossible to know, right? Sometimes, again, maybe God will throw us the proverbial bone. Sometimes we may understand things, sometimes not, right? Probably many times, many times not. The question is, okay, how are we supposed to deal with it? But even if evil is there, someone can tap in where God says, you know what? I'm going to use this person to get to you. Why? Come on, if I knew that, I'd be world famous. I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be on magazines, be world famous. Maybe I, sing at the Super Bowl at halftime, maybe, right? But we don't know, right? Essentially, we don't know. So you can say, what? I have to sit there and take it? We have to learn. We have to be better. We have to strive. We have to work hard. The Ramchal says in Path of the Just, we're here to strive. We're living in difficult circumstances, true. But that's it. That's our Olam Haba. That's our portion of the next world, right? As we strive and we work hard, is our faith intact? Do we speak Lashon Hara against someone because we do? Or whatever the case is. Do we get angry when we're put in certain tests? There are a lot of things, right? There are a lot of things that on a daily basis we're tested with. Some things we do better, some things we don't, some things we totally fail at. Is that what God wants? No. Every day is an opportunity to grow, right? But, at the end of the day, when we take stock of what we've done, before we go to sleep, a person will say, come on, did I accomplish what I should have? Did I go as far as I should have? What did I fail at? What did I do good at? And, if a person does that on a regular basis, you know where you stand. You know exactly where you stand. Right? It's kind of hard to look yourself in the face and say, listen, you did that, you did that. You did the other thing. You got to work hard. That's what life is. Life is hard. Right? I see many times, where's the person, the person's Facebook profile, where'd they grow up? School of Hard Knocks. Okay. A lot of places like that everywhere. Right? Some people had it easier. Some people had it harder. Some people had it really hard. We don't know. Right? We don't know how anything, is really, meted out. Sometimes, again, God can throw us a bone, a proverbial bone, and throw us something where we can understand certain things. But in general, very hard, right? Very, very hard to understand. But the point is that evil has a purpose, and that is anyone can tap in. And if a person taps in, you're going to say, wow, God takes away the free will. No, God allows them. If he doesn't want them to, they won't. And if they try and do something, God can stop them, right? Here, many times here in Israel, after the fact, they'll say 2 weeks later, a month later, oh, the army foiled all these different attacks. But they don't tell you. They tell you later. I guess, I don't know, they want to scare people, whatever it is, or their censorship, whatever the case is. So what do? They'll tell you after the fact. But so you don't see it. You don't see it while you go through it. I mean, sometimes you do, but in general, you don't. That's the famous thing that the Torah says when, by the sin of the golden calf, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I want to understand you. I want to see your face. Meaning, I want to understand why we go through things in this world. What does God say? No one can see my face and live. No one will understand. Right? And you can only see me from behind. What does it mean, see me from behind? It means you can only ever understand something well after the fact. Again, sometimes maybe, God will show you, certain things that happen, you connect the dots, right? So most people know I've had this odyssey for whatever, a long time, 18 years, certain thing I had to go through. And, I went from Israel back to South America. I went South America to New Jersey. 3 years later, came back to Israel, been in Israel ever since. Right? And the neighborhood I live in, I've been there ever since. So almost 15 years, starting this summer, 15 years. But for all the different things I had to go through, 3 of my kids end up marrying into 3 families in the neighborhood I live in. Now, is that a coincidence? Could say that. I had, my last 2 married into families that lived 1 building apart. I mean, one of them subsequently moved, a little bit closer to where I live now, but they lived 1 building apart. Now, what are the odds of that? The odds are probably, you're going to say, about 0, right? Very, very slim. And the irony is that, by the engagement party, but, most everybody knew each other because we knew the families, right? So it's kind of uncanny, but you say, come on, you lost all your money here. Then you go to South America, absolute disaster. So I have no idea whatsoever why I had to go there. I don't know, maybe there's some sparks I had to take out of that. That's why I mentioned this before. Then I go to New Jersey. New Jersey also, I didn't have such a easy time there. I got involved in real estate, 2008, the real estate market crashed, right? With all the what do you call it? Mortgage crisis. So I looked up to heaven. I said, I don't know what you want over here. I did something I didn't necessarily want to do, but okay. Yeah, I got involved in, giving classes to converts. Okay. But I was like, big irony over here. I got into something, had some success, and then boom, everything taken away. So then a friend of mine tells me, why don't you come back? I never made Aliyah. I was never a citizen here in Israel. So why don't you come back and live like everyone else? I said, okay, good point. So I picked up, my oldest daughter was going into high school. My wife made a pilot trip, got my daughter into high school, and that was it. We moved. I moved to this community. Some people checked it out for us, found a place to live, as we'll say, the rest is history. It wasn't easy. Definitely wasn't easy when I got here, but I'm just saying, with everything, being in 2 continents in 3 years, definitely not easy. My kids mostly intact. That was a pretty big miracle. But when you look at everything, would I have signed up for that? No, not at all. If God would have come to me in a dream and say, listen, for 18 years, your life's going to be really hard in so many different ways. But guess what? In the end, I'm going to make this happen, that happen, the other thing happen. You ready to sign off on it? But I wasn't given that choice. If I'd have been given that choice, I would have known, 3 of my kids are going to marry, into beautiful families, and the families mesh and all that, which doesn't always go. But you're going to tell me that's what's going to happen? Come on. I would have bet all the money I don't have on that. That's not going to happen, right? So now you look at it to connect the dots, right? So here I'm connecting my own dots, right? I ended up in one place, ended up another place, ended up coming back, ended up coming back. But the place I came back to, wasn't where I lived before. I didn't really know that much about the community. I said, okay, got my kids into school. We'll see. Stay here for a year. We'll see what happens. Right, we'll see what happens. So I've been here for 15 years, almost 15 years. Now, when you connect those dots, and now you see how each piece of the puzzle, just like the story of Purim, each piece of the puzzle in the story of Purim, God's name's not mentioned once. You can look. God's name's not mentioned, not hinted. Anywhere in the entire book. Now, but each event, if you look at it, is significant. And each event by itself doesn't necessarily look so significant, but each one helps to bring down Mr. Haman himself. Right? Brings down Haman himself. We can say, but all these things are random. No, they're not random events. But we don't necessarily put the pieces together, until we see how it all fits. Once you see how the puzzle fits, then you see how the pieces fit. So in life, it's like that. They can say, wow, no idea about this, no idea about that. But then somehow there are certain connections that are made in different things. I mean, I could, speak about that till tomorrow. That's not, that's not the point. But a person has to see, or, if they look back, there are patterns. There are patterns, but some things look so out of the realm of reality. That happened, nothing happened. You end up here, you end up there. Different things. It looks like an absolute disaster. That's the way it looks on paper, right? I had a place to live, had food, wasn't starving, wasn't freezing, different things. Okay. But there were many other things that were, extremely difficult. But in the end, coming back to where I came back to, what I've expected, in 10 years or 12 years, my kids are going to get married and how it's going to happen. No, marrying them off is another thing. I'm not even going to go there, right? Finding money to marry them off is a different issue, right? But I'm saying putting, once you see that, and I would always speak at the, there are 7 festive meals you have every day after someone gets married. So on Shabbos, so that's normally what I speak about, is the divine providence, because people getting married, that's no question. There's absolutely no question. A tremendous amount of divine providence. Tremendous amount. It's not, it's not even like you're going to say, oh, I have to look. I have to think about it. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You're making something really small look really big. No. These things are, black on white. Black on white over here. Clear as day. It's not something you can say it's random. That's for sure, right? You can never say, it's random. So are there many other things we see that even in our own lives that we don't understand? Yeah, 100%. I don't think there's any question. We may never understand them in 10 lifetimes. Okay? But we live in this cream puff generation where people want to understand things now. Yesterday, right? Fast food generation, right? That's what we want. I want an answer now why I'm going through this. Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Didn't Moshe Rabbeinu say that? Didn't Moses himself say, I want to understand you right now? Show me your face. What does God say? No. There's no possible way. But I want to understand. Who are you? Why should God even give you an answer? We're on such a low level. Why should he? If Moses, of all people, is not going to get it, why should any of us? Right? But we want to know. We want to understand. Try and understand. Some things maybe we'll understand a little bit. Other things we won't understand. And in 10 lifetimes, it doesn't matter. God's the one who runs the world. Right? That's the mantra. That's what we have to keep saying over and over and over. I remember I used to be very big into politics and Israeli politics. Once my Rebbe, said, are you happy with the way God runs the world 95% of the time? I'm like, I guess so. So he said, the other 5% you're never going to understand in 10 lifetimes. He goes, just sit and learn. Right? Don't worry about you have to sit and learn. That's your obligation. Right? You have to sit and learn why this one's doing that. And, Biden goes to meet Putin, and why didn't he do it before? Whatever, this other guy, whatever, Zelensky, whatever, he does that, and he goes like in the middle of the night, nobody knows, okay, so it might lead to this, it might lead to that, everyone's talking, okay, all kinds of speculation. What's going to be, nobody knows, but it makes for good talk, right? Maybe it's going to be this, maybe it's going to be that, maybe, God forbid it could lead to something worse, yeah, but at the end of the day, does God run the world or not? How does that affect me? It shouldn't. Why do I say it shouldn't affect me? Because it's all meaningless. It doesn't matter. Because if we believe God's in charge, we're going to leave it up to him 100%. We're going to say, okay, whatever you do, you do. I have to live in this world. 100%. I have to live in this world. All right? Regardless what's going on there, what's going on in other places, well, what difference does it make? Unless it has a direct effect. Unless it has a direct effect on a person. Okay. Right? So that might be a little bit different. But the things that don't affect us in general, what's the point of speaking about it? That's what we get talk radio for. Everyone giving their span, and you got political pundits and this and that. Okay, let them talk. Let them talk. They know what they're talking about, some more, some less. Who cares? Right? What's the most important thing? What did we say before? Right? Get back to what we said before. That what's the essence? What's the bottom line of Torah? What's the bottom line of Torah over here? Right? Gather these sparks. Draw close to God. Right? Put our spiritual side in action. That's what we're doing here. That's what we should be doing here. What's going on in other places? Okay, why should I even worry about it? Doesn't affect me. It is kind of funny. Israel just got condemned. In the UN, they got the most, they're 1/1000th or less of the world's population. They got the most UN condemnations. Condemnations out of anyone. I mean, you got some pretty rogue countries. You got Iran, you got Somalia, you got some other places, you got other places. I mean, come on. Israel's only the size of the state in New Jersey. They got more condemnations than anybody. Anybody? Why does anyone care about this one strip of land? Why do I mention it? Because there's a huge outcry of certain places in quote unquote the West Bank that they allocated a whole bunch of places to build. And then everyone's jumping up and down. Oh, that's going to be bad for the final state, for the final solution, Palestinian state, next to an Israeli state, next to a Jewish state, and all this and all that. Doesn't anyone remember? People forget. They have, they have a sophisticated amnesia, right? That's what I would call it. Sophisticated amnesia, and they're thinking, they forget that any peace agreement, we're not really going to get into politics, right? I don't really speak about politics, but in general, every peace agreement that the Israelis have made with the Arabs have broken. Every last one of them. They've totally broken. So, who are we dealing with over here? On their books, anyone who dies a martyr, any quote unquote, Arab, quote unquote Palestinian, no such thing as a Palestinian people, but any of them who die killing Jews, they get money. The families get money. Right? One of the things the government's trying to stop. Right? That's insanity. You're trying to make peace with somebody, and they're going to have all these people try and kill you, and you're paying them. You're paying their family salary. That makes no sense. Makes no sense. So now you're going to say that's an obstacle to peace? What about the people themselves? People in charge, they're an obstacle to peace, aren't they? Just had some, some attacks on, from Gaza to these borderline, communities that are not far, in the south. You imagine, throw this out there. You imagine in Mexico. No offense to any Mexicans out there. Mexico decides they're shooting missiles into Texas. What do you think the American government's going to do? What do you think the American government's going to do? They're going to flatten Mexico. They're going to flatten them like a pancake. They're going to put up hard top. They're going to put up a McDonald's. They're going to call it even. And then they'll ask questions. Then they'll investigate. Your own citizens are being attacked and you're the aggressor? You got to be kidding. Like, it's totally logical. But to say, these are freedom fighters. They're not terrorists. And children get killed because they use them as human shields. What are you supposed to do? It's a no-win situation. No-win situation. Not to mention they fake a lot of things and they lie. And that's what they do. It's a lot of propaganda, but that's what sells. And everyone buys up. A number of years ago, the Israelis blew up a UN school. So the UN was, rip-roaring mad. How could they send how could they blow up their school? Their school in Gaza. They said, we wouldn't have blown it up had they not been using it to shoot missiles. There's like a whole missile factory in that school, by the way. So they blew it up. They blew it up so they couldn't shoot missiles. Oh, that's an act of aggression. Act of aggression. Right? So I can speak, for 5 days on all this. Right? So they're still spewing the same thing, but, the Jewish people in the land of Israel, we're held to a higher standard. We're held to a higher standard. So for whatever reason, these things happen. Test our mettle, but it's an absolute miracle. We're still here. And the Israelis say it's based on our army and our tactics. And, with nuclear weapons, don't tell anyone. With nuclear weapons, okay. Right. But, People make the mistake and think, yeah, it's all about that. It's not. You need a standing army, there's no question. That is no question. But the fact you got 20 states around you want to destroy you, just by the sheer numbers, they should be able to, in theory. Not they should get any ideas from me, right? But, you look at these things in general, and you say, come on, it's got to be a greater purpose. It's got to be a higher meaning. It's got to be a higher meaning over here, right? So it's not about my spin on things, or other people's spin on things. Whatever happens, it's a sign for the Jewish people, right? There was a huge earthquake in Turkey, right? Also in Syria, pretty miraculous. We didn't feel too much over here. Could have. I think there are a lot of buildings that would be in trouble if, God forbid, there was an earthquake here of any, sizable amount, right? But it's a pretty darn miracle, that nothing really happened here. Poo. Nothing should happen, right? And there was total devastation. So there is protection. There is divine protection. I don't think there's any question. But people make the mistake and think it's all because of the army. And nothing to do with. You need a standing army. It's true. But if you didn't have people learning, giving holiness to the land, the army wouldn't be able to do anything. That's to go hand in hand. Right? So the point here, back to my point here, and that is you got these sparks of holiness. So we have to tap in. We have to tap into spirituality to do what God wants, not get sucked into what society says or does. Right? That's easier said than done. That is easier said than done. Right? And the reason is because it's the world of distraction. That's what the Ramchal brings down in Derech Hashem. You're right. God says it's a world of distraction. You made it a distraction. I allowed you to make it a distraction, but I didn't want you to, get sucked into it. And people do not like to be alone with themselves. They like to be distracted because I have to think on my own for a split second. What am I going to do? Horrific thing. What am I going to do? My venture's up north. If I'm going up tomorrow, I'll see the same thing. Going to a bus station, waiting for a bus. I'll be listening, to a class of my MP3. And I'll see people, what are they doing? They're on the phones. Not talking on the phone per se, some yes, some no. But they got a few minutes waiting for the bus. I don't know, 10 minutes with this, that. What are they doing? They're looking things up. God forbid they missed an email, they missed something or whatever. Everyone's got their head in the phone. Everybody. I'm not, this is not an exaggeration. It's pathetic. So I sort of, I shouldn't say it's fun. It's really not so fun. But, people say, shouldn't you be listening to class you listen to? I said, yeah. Yeah, you can do more than one thing. I can multitask. Pretty good at that. Right. But at the same time, you see what people do. And you see people cannot be alone with themselves. So if they have a little bit of free time playing Sudoku, they're on their phone, they're doing whatever. But it's just, I was waiting for a bus and the bus was late. One day last week it was late. I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It was late. There's another bus that didn't come and it was coming later, whatever the case is. So there are a lot of people there. Usually the bus I take, there's not too many people, except in the summertime when a lot of people going up north to the beach or whatever. But, there shouldn't have been a lot of people there. There are a lot of people there. And I'm just, I'm sitting there waiting, and watching other people. And it's just, that wasn't the only thing I was doing, but it was unbelievable. I shouldn't say I was shocked, right? It's not really so shocking. I've seen it so many times. Nobody there wants to be alone themselves. They have their face in a phone, watching something, listening to something, scrolling through. Most people just scrolling through, whatever they're looking at, because they don't want to be alone with themselves. What are they going to do? What are they going to think about? Gee, life is hard and this and that. They don't want to be alone with themselves. It's a disease. We don't have time, right? We're so busy, quote unquote, we don't have any time. Be alone with our own thoughts, right? So I remember a number of years ago, I mentioned this point when I said, when's the only free time? When's the only free time a person has, right? In general, it's not really so free, right? But when is it? When would I say it is? We're in the bathroom, but you can't think Torah. You're not allowed to think Torah in the bathroom. right? You're in a disgusting place. You can't think Torah. Okay. So at least you have a little bit of time to think. At least while you're there, doing whatever you need to do. We're not going to get gross here, right? But a person has kids. You got a few minutes, you're alone. He's like, all right, got to go to the bathroom. You got a few minutes in there, whatever. They're like banging on the door. Right, what happened to my free time? Gone. Got to make free time. Got to think. What am I doing here? What's my purpose? What should I be doing? What have I failed at? What do I have to work on? These are deep things. It's not just, if I don't keep it, I'm going to fry in hell forever. Forget that. But you won't have a connection to God. What do you think? God's this big ogre? He just wants to fry you? No. You're going to get tested, and he wants you to pass the test. He wants you to rise to the occasion. But you say, we live in this cream puff generation, and it's very hard. You're right. It's very hard. There are a lot of things that are very hard. Okay. But you're given a golden opportunity, right? The golden opportunity is to be able to tap into Torah, to tap into your spiritual side. God allows you to do that once a week, called Shabbos. You got that ability once a week if you're a Jew. Or if you're a non-Jew, just, a little bit, a non-Jew could tap into, if they don't want to convert, right? But God gives you an opportunity, a golden opportunity. You have 3 nice meals, right? Better meals than you would normally eat. Person goes to synagogue, they sleep a little bit more, they learn, they mind over matter. They don't think about anything going on in the world. Any of the things that they need to worry about, out of mind, out of sight. Not so simple, right? Not the topic for now. Not necessarily so simple, but at the same time, God gives the Jewish people 1 day a week to tap in. You got other holidays to tap in, okay? But you got 1 day a week. 1 day a week. For secular people, it's the worst day of the week in many ways. For secular Jews, why? What are they going to do? They say, well, I sleep a little bit more. I relax a little bit more. I kill time. That's what God wants. He's giving you an opportunity to tap in, but the soul is insatiable. You need to satisfy the soul with spirituality. What if you don't satisfy the soul with spirituality? What happens? You fill with garbage, right? Needs a lot more garbage to fill, right? So people fill with all kinds of things, but they go out of their minds. What am I going to do? Where am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How am I going to do it? All these things creep up because they have nothing to do. They've essentially have nothing to do, right? In spiritual terms, that's, it's understandable because God's giving you an opportunity to tap in. And you're saying, no, I don't want to tap in. I want to tap into my stupidity, whatever I want to do. That's what I want to tap into, and I want to enjoy it. Don't make me feel guilty. I want to enjoy it. So you're allowed to enjoy Shabbos, right? There's no question. Shabbos is an incredible day, but you have to know how to enjoy it. Someone will say, I like to relax on Shabbos. Not the way you would. Yeah, because the Torah says you're not allowed to, right? Do other things, right? You're allowed to sleep more than you normally do. Does that mean God wants you to sleep 25 hours? No. You got to learn. You got to pray. I mean, a lot of things you got to do. You're obligated to do. So it's a golden opportunity. Every day is a golden opportunity. It's a golden opportunity to live the way God wants you to. Is it going to be easy? No, not going to be easy, but you got to be focused. Even if a person can't learn all day, they learn part of the day, whatever it is, that's what they got to do. That's bringing God into the world. Otherwise, it's all about what? Going to Walmart, buying things I don't need, different things, right? Following March Madness, what's going to be? Start a baseball season, get all that, got what to look forward to. But what am I living for? What's my purpose? So here, the Or Chaim HaKadosh, I'm not going to get that far, I see. All right, but the Or Chaim HaKadosh here says, the whole point is to bring out these nitzitzos, these sparks, but you can only do it through Torah. See, that's the punchline. Can't do it with anything else. Everything else, no. It has to be within the realm of Torah. Once you have the base of Torah, yeah, that's a different issue. That's a totally different issue. But he said you got to look at it as a business. And I would always say years ago, right, if I'd learned Torah like Bill Gates interested in making money, right, and working 16, 17 hours a day to stay at the top, Not saying I'm a big fan of his, just saying, work ethic and everything else would have been a Torah giant years ago. Because you got to look at it like a business. You want to build it? How are you going to build it? What are you going to do? This, that. Right? That's what Torah is. You build. It's all building blocks. You got to start from somewhere. Right? Even if you're starting from the bottom, you build yourself up. But it's all about learning. What am I learning? Where am I learning? Right? Even though women don't have the same obligation, they still have to learn. They still have to know what to do. They still have to live inspired, in many ways. Not just the guys get all the obligation, right? You also should learn. No question. Not necessarily at the expense of other things. Okay, right? But, it's about having this connection. Right? It's about looking at it like a business. Not just like, well, I'll learn when I have time. See, that differentiates what we'll call the men from the boys. Why? Because if a person only learns when they have free time, okay, they'll get some credit for it. Not going to say they won't get any credit for it, but it's not the same if they don't, if they don't learn whenever they can, right? That's a whole different thing. So he says you want to bring out these spiritual things, you got to do it through Torah, and you got to do it the right way. Because if you don't do it the right way, it's going to fail, right? I heard someone asked me recently, actually yesterday, I saw it this morning, that about conversion, and the spouse, doesn't want to go through with it, or at a low level, or whatever, and they're passionate about it, but what are you going to do? They're not going to divorce their wife, right? They're not going to divorce their spouse either way, right? So who says they're going to convert in the end, or they should convert? They can still stay in Noahide, right? Not obligated over here, and I wouldn't tell someone to get divorced, because of it. But that wasn't the question. The question was, what about reform conversion, conservative conversion? It's not recognized. We don't recognize it. Conservative doesn't recognize reform. Reform probably won't recognize conservative. They won't recognize ours either. So what? Right? But if you're gonna do something half baked, you come out half baked, which makes would make my job a little more difficult. Then I have to re-squeegee your brain, right? It'd be a lot more difficult, in that sense, because what they learned is wrong. I can tell you, I was there, studied by the conservative movement. What they teach is wrong. It's false. It's heresy. Many different things. Many different things. Right? So what would be the point? Someone once told me, they paid a certain amount of money. They know it's not true, but they want to get their certificate anyway. Just say they're Jewish, but you don't believe it's true. You don't believe it's true. He said, yeah, but I just want, I want to finish it. I want to be known as, some people will consider me a Jew. So my answer was, why don't you consider you gave some money to a bad charity and take it as a loss? You take it as a charitable loss, right? It's a charitable loss. You blew money, okay? You didn't know any better, whatever, move on. Person, no, but I paid for it. Couldn't get it out of their mind. They're like, I have to finish it because I paid for it. But you don't believe it's true. You don't believe the teachers are telling the truth. So what's that piece of paper worth anyway, even in your own eyes? They couldn't get over that. So my answer was, if you're going to do it right, do it right. If you're going to do it not right, you come out half-baked. That's the bottom line. Right? That was my answer to that. And if you can't convert, you can't convert. I'm not telling people to divorce their spouses because they don't want to convert. Right? If they're meant to be divorced anyway, and they're going to get divorced, different issue. But if not, everything is more or less okay, then no reason to get divorced because of that. I know one story, I don't know the detail, but I'll say it anyway, that a person said on himself, he's very happy he converted. Very, very happy he converted, but it cost him his wife. And he said he's happy to be a Jew, but he wouldn't tell people to do it. He wouldn't tell people to do it because he paid a price. He paid a price. They didn't have to convert. Could have stayed married. Right? He said he's glad to be a Jew. Don't get me wrong. He's glad to be a Jew, but he paid a price. Paid a serious price. Yeah, I see there are a lot of questions here. One second. So when it mentions chapter 2, it didn't seem to be a commandment to people. It just says right. It says God created Shabbos, right? That was my point also. Somebody had said, oh, that shows, I could tap in as a non-Jew. It doesn't show that. It just says God created it. So you're right. There's no command. When does the command come? By Exodus chapter 20. That's when the command comes. They can't make such a claim. Right? I agree. Definitely agree. Someone asked, the Jewish people believe the Torah is 100% true once the Messiah gets here. Now, once the Messiah comes, and there are all these miracles, non-Jews won't be able to convert. There won't be any conversion. Just like in the time of King Solomon and King David. Nobody was allowed to convert. Why? Because they're open miracles. Now, the question is going to be, what happens? What's going to be with the Jews? Are the Jews going to repent 100%? And they'll all be saved? So I would say, being pessimistic, that a lot of them, because they're, most of them are intermarried or whatever, and they have no connection to Judaism. Many of them, as it's brought down in the prophets, a third's going to die. A third of the people are going to die in this war of Gog and Magog, if there's going to be a war. A third will be injured, and a third will survive. Right? But if someone desecrates Shabbos or they're intermarried, why would they survive? Why would God keep them around? I definitely do not believe all the Jews are going to come back. Right? That all the Jewish people are going to come back. No, I think I think the opposite. I think there's going to be a remnant, as brought down in other places. There's going to be a remnant of Jews left, those who believe and really believe, and the rest are going to get wiped out. Now, some will disagree and say, no, it's going to be a mass repentance movement. At that point, they'll be saved. I don't know. Very hard for me to believe. Very, very hard for me to believe. Just because of where people are holding today. It's all about desire. Things are going to change overnight. They're not going to give in to desire at this point. I don't think so. And a lot of people doing some very serious transgressions. Why did God keep them alive? Give them a portion of the world to come for what? Right? They're doing horrific things. God should bring them back and save them. Why? In theory, I would love to say, yeah, they're all going to come back and they're all going to repent. I don't see it. I definitely don't see it. Some will. I think some will, the vast majority. I think too far gone. I think the vast majority, are, they're already in quicksand. They're about to go under. They're about to go under. If not, they've already sunk. So for those people, how are they going to come back? Very hard for me to imagine. But again, I could be wrong. Maybe there will be a mass repentance movement. Maybe, right? I'm just saying my own personal opinion. For what it's worth, I don't see it. Somebody asks, is it a sin for Noahites to have pity with all those Christians and Muslims who go to hell? Why do they have to have pity? They have it coming, right? God is going to destroy them, right? It's going to destroy Esav or Edom or the Western world, like you take a match to straw. You ever taken a match to straw? You know what happens? Boom, lights up like nothing. God's going to wipe them out like nothing. I have to have pity. I don't know. What do I have to have pity? God is doing justice over here. On the other hand, God may have compassion because the angels want to sing. The angels want to sing when the Egyptians are drowning, right? And God says, my creation's drowning and you want to sing? Well, of course, why not let them sing? Look at the Egyptians did to the Jewish people. 80% of the Jewish people, because the Egyptians did not go out of Egypt. They all died in the plague of darkness. They had about 8-9 million people or more died in the plague of darkness. Look what they did. You should leave them alive? God should feel pity. Why should he feel pity? So God is a being that can feel good and bad at the same time. Right? Bad in the sense he has to wipe out, these people. Good in the sense they deserve it. They have it coming. So he's going to act with justice. Right? We can't have both emotions at the same time. We can't be happy, sad at the same time. Right? It doesn't work. Doesn't work by us. Is it sad? I don't know. How many people, the Malbim says more than 100 years ago in the Zechariah chapter 14, the Malbim says there's going to be this war between Edom and Ishmael. Edom, the Western world, Ishmael being the Muslims. They're going to have difference of opinion in religion, go figure, and they're going to have this bloodbath. They're going to realize they're fighting for the sake of the Jews. They're going to march into Jerusalem, join together, try and destroy the Jewish people. That's going to be the end. Messiah is going to come and wipe them out. Right? So anywhere close, the Malbim says, to the land of Israel, they get hit first. Right? Lebanon, Egypt, Syria, all these places, they're going to wiped out first. Beirut, Iraq, they're all going to wiped out first. A very big rabbi in Kabbalah today claims no, disagrees. Who's going to get hit first? Europe. Why is Europe going to get hit first? Because of all the Jewish blood in Europe. Tens of thousands of people, millions of people died on the, blood drenched. Blood drenched. The whole continent, blood drenched. Jewish blood. You think it's going to be mercy? God's going to show mercy over here? So according to this Kabbalist, they're going to wipe out first. Right? But nobody knows. Nobody really knows. But he claims because there's so much Jewish blood, they deserve it first. 100%. I should have pity. Look what they're doing now. Look what's going on in America. America's Edom. Right? What do these cockroaches do? To the Jews. You openly look Jewish. Getting slapped upside the head all over the place. All over the place. Anti-Semitism up like no tomorrow. Like no tomorrow. There was a story, someone got convicted, whatever, of Florida, of all places. Someone was speaking Hebrew and someone came up and smacked him. Knocked him over, pummeled him. Speaking Hebrew. I mean, these things are horrific. I don't think it's not going to get better before the Messiah comes. Certainly doesn't sound like it. But somebody like that, and God's going to, do justice with them. Plus, I have to have pity. I have to have pity. They take it on themselves. Right? They hate Jews themselves. God's not forcing them. No one's forcing their hand. Right? See this, this video's gone right, this video's gone viral. This Goy Defense League. He got these, I don't know, white supremacists, whatever, like just, megaphones going on screaming against Jews. Go back to where you came from, this, like racist, really racist. Not a good place to be. But is God going to have pity? Or is he going to have pity? Why should he have pity? He doesn't want to have to destroy them. I guess what? He's going to, one of the character traits of God is it's a character trait of justice. God will enact it when he has to. Does he want to? No. Did God want to annihilate the Egyptians? No. But he had to. Right? Not only that, I'll take it one step further, God's mercy, which we would never have. And that is that the bodies came on the land. So commentaries ask the question. I spoke about this once in my YouTube videos on the Parsha, beyond Orthodox conversion to Judaism, right? In the beginning of the book of Exodus. Why do they deserve to be buried? Why in the world do they deserve to be buried? I would have said, like Bin Laden, let the fish eat them. Let the whales eat them. The sharks eat them. Let them get eaten up. Why in the world they deserve to be buried? You know why they deserve to be buried? They deserve to be buried because they said their God is fighting against us, because they're all confused in the dark. And the Jews got out. There was light by them. So they admitted, imagine, they admitted what was going on, that God is fighting against them. And for that, they deserve to be buried. If I were to be God, I put on my funny George Burns glasses, my funny mustache, I would have said, are you kidding me? Right? What's going on? What in the world is going on? So God had mercy. They deserve to be punished. God had mercy. What was the mercy? Mercy was he allowed them to be buried. Now, if we take a survey, you take a survey. Let's say it was a Nazi, Yimach Shemam V'Zichron. Take a survey of Jews. destroy them like they destroyed you, right? Burn them, this and that, or give them proper burials. I don't think they're going to say give them proper burials. At least certainly not some of them, right? They have what's coming to them. But see, we don't look the same way as God looks at it. God says, but they admitted in their pain and in their destruction, they admitted, I'm king. They admitted, I did this and I fought against them. So what? That's what I would say. What do you care? He did that. They admitted it. They're in a lot of pain. They're being destroyed. Yeah, but they admitted the truth, right? So some of the commentaries say because they admitted the truth, they had the merit to be buried. That's a merit. The merit to be buried. We wouldn't have said that. None of us would have said such a thing. Let them rot in the ocean. Let the fishies eat them. Sit there, have mercy? Why would we have mercy? They have it coming. They have it coming. You know how many Jews have died in the name of JC? To have mercy on these Christians? Turn the other cheek and burn and kill Jews? Torture them? Because they don't believe in JC, or they certainly believe we killed them? We killed them? There's going to be payback, trust me. A lot of payback. Just, again, how is Edom going to get destroyed? Edom's going to get destroyed like fire to straw. Fire to straw. To have mercy on them? Why would you have mercy? Why in the world do we have mercy? Right? They'll be lucky if they get to hell. Getting to hell is a cleansing process. It's a cleansing process to fix up the soul. If they have some merit somewhere, maybe they'll get there. Who says they're going to get there? Transgress the no-hide laws, a number of them, they're liable for death penalty. All the Christians and the Hindus, they're liable for death penalty unless they repent. Idolatry, finished. Right? What are all the people that are promiscuous? Oh, adultery. Oh, there's probably a lot. Probably a lot. Gonna wipe them out also. Totally wipe them out also. Who's gonna be left? Who's gonna be left? They're not liable for death penalty. There will be righteous people. There will be no hides left. But someone's a Christian or a Hindu, they're wiped out. Now, Muslims might not necessarily be idolaters, but they're in trouble. They're certainly in trouble. What about murder? It's according to the no-hide laws. Many things. I should have mercy on them. Should feel bad. We say in the Shemona Esrei, silent meditation, whatever you want to call it, there's a paragraph there about justice. We want God to bring out justice. God's going to take care of business. No one should worry. God's going to take care of business. And when God does justice, even though he might feel bad he has to do it, what are we going to say? God did justice. God did what he needed to do. God took care of these people. God himself may feel, bad he had to do it. Okay. He can feel bad. Who says we have to feel bad? Right? It's a contradiction. When the enemies fall, one place it says you're allowed to be happy, another place says you're not allowed to be happy. It depends what it's talking about. Certainly by Amalek, when they fall, you're allowed to be happy because that doesn't apply to them. Could be other nations. Maybe you're not allowed to be happy, but you can say God did justice. God took care of business. He thwarted my enemies. Right? Remember, getting to hell, and getting judged and having your soul cleansed for the terrible things it did is a merit. It's a huge merit. You might suffer a lot, but you should have a portion of the world to come. Why should these people have a portion of the world to come? Are they the righteous of the nations? I don't think so. Not even close. There will be some. Not going to say not. There will be some. What if someone's an idolater and they saved Jews during the war? Good question. I don't have an answer. On the one hand, they're liable for death penalty. On the other hand, look what they did over here. But is that enough to turn the tide? Is that enough to say they get saved? I don't think so. That's what I would say. They're liable for death penalty. They'll get merit in this world for what they did, saving Jews. Okay, they'll get merit. They risked their lives. Very good. But they're still idolaters. Is God going to overlook that? Again, I'm not God here. But if the Noahide law, one of the Noahide laws is idolatry, they don't get a free pass. Why do they get a free pass? Does that make them one of the righteous? No, it doesn't. But they saved Jews during the war. True. Can't bribe God over here. Famous story with Rabbi Cheskel Abramsky, Torah giants of the last generation, the head of the rabbinical court in London. Rabbi Cheskel Abramsky knew somebody that was a fighter pilot. He would go on a daily basis to shoot down Nazi planes. So he asked him how he's doing. Is his faith intact? He's keeping Shabbos, and he said, yeah, everything's good. He said, I keep Shabbos. But, because of all the tension, whatever, I smoke on Shabbos. So God's going to look the other way. God's going to look the other way because of all the self-sacrifice. So Cheskel Abramsky said, no, you get tremendous merit for the self-sacrifice. No question about it. You're risking your life every day, no question. But you can't bribe God over here. You can't say God's going to look the other way because you desecrated Shabbos. God's going to say, oh, you smoked on Shabbos, no big deal. That's what he answered. You can't bribe God over here. Because you did something maybe egregious, but you did other mitzvahs. Who says they offsets? You get punished for the transgression. You get reward for the mitzvah. It depends what you did. Depends how severe it is. Depends what level of knowledge. A lot of different factors. Many, many different factors. It's not whitewashed. Not by any stretch. Yeah, somebody asks, should a non-Jew convert or should a Noahide convert? Why? Why do they have to convert? They don't have to convert. They have no obligation to convert. If they want to, by all means, right? But they have to go through a certain process. Got to move to Jewish community. Move within walking distance to a synagogue. Got to keep all the mitzvahs, whatever applies. Are they obligated? No, certainly not. If they want to, they meet the criteria. Very good, right? There's a lot to do. But I would say it's not, it's definitely not for everyone. Not everyone merits it unless the 20% who start the process actually finish. So, so there's no obligation, none. If a person could have converted and God sees in their heart they really could have and they didn't, that's a different issue. But do they have an obligation? Certainly not. Certainly not. Somebody asked what kind of punishments an individual gain just for being a Jew hater. No, it's not going to be, being a rabid anti-Semite. Let's say it doesn't cause damage. We'll make it easy, right? He just says, anti-Semitic things. I just saw something recently, a couple of years ago. There was a basketball player live streaming a game, right? And he said an anti-Semitic slur, and he lost whatever. He was injured, and he lost his pay for the rest of the year, which really wasn't that much, and that was it. So Julius Edelman, used to be a wide receiver for the New England Patriots. Anyone who knows, and he's half Jewish. His father was Jewish, so really he's not really Jewish at all, right? But he said, "Come on, come to Miami a lot, sit down, a Friday night dinner, like that's gonna solve the problem." We give him a little bit of gefilte fish, some chicken soup, some matzo balls. Yeah, realize one thing: person makes such a statement, it's part of his insides. You can't say, "Oh, it slipped." No such thing. What the person really thinks. It's what they really believe, right? But it just came out, and it can come out anytime, right? So a person can be punished for their thoughts, even if they don't act on it. Even though we say words in a person's heart are only words, you're not only punished for what you think, right? But that's, even if a person doesn't know anything, you can have anti-Semitism, let's say in Poland of all places, right? In Poland, there aren't so many Jews, right? It's like ironic in so many ways that you can have anti-Semitism and there are no Jews. It's irrational. Anti-Semitism is totally irrational, right? Are they going to get knocked around like, like death penalty by stoning? No, wouldn't say that. It's not as severe. It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. Cursing Jews, yeah, it's a bad thing. Negative prohibition. They're not liable for death penalty per se. If they start roughing people up, beating them up, oh, now they're liable for damages. For damages, they are liable for what they think and what's in their heart, to a certain extent. If they don't say anything, they still may be liable to a certain extent. But once they start saying things, and they're in trouble. Not to quote, not to, giving her, some space here, over time, Miss Whoopi Goldberg over here, just use her as an example. She still doesn't think she did anything wrong. Judaism's not a race. But, the Holocaust wasn't about race. I mean, okay, I understand where she's coming from. Totally off base. Totally off base. Isn't that anti-Semitic? Yeah, it is. I mean, a total ignorance also, right? She's not backing down. And the only reason she had to make an apology, she got thrown off her show for a month. And they blew up her Twitter file, Twitter account, whatever. What happened again recently? Recently, so you can say words are cheap. Yeah, they are. She's a big anti-Semite. Roger Waters. Anyone know who Roger Waters is? A big anti-Semite. Mel Gibson. All these people. And you got Jews and self-hating Jews also. So are they in trouble? Yeah, they're in trouble. They're liable for death penalty. I wouldn't go that far. Saying negative things and nasty things or whatever. It's not the same as if they're like actually beating people up. Once you're doing that, that's a whole different thing. Now you're causing damage. Now you're totally causing damage. So I'm not saying this is good. It's certainly not good by any stretch. Right. But, what level of punishment? Can't answer. Death penalty, I don't think so. Right. That's for sure not. It might be liable for other things, but, corporal punishment, no. It's definitely a bad thing. There's no question. Definitely a bad thing. But, when you see all these things going on, so you can say, well, it's a good thing. We're getting closer to the coming of the Messiah. You're right. These are horrific things. Horrific things. Person gets whacked over the head for speaking Hebrew. Or even worse, person looks like an Orthodox Jew, get knocked over and this and that, pummeled just for dressing the way they dress. There'll be payback. There'll definitely be payback. Right? I don't think it's going to be severe, like death penalty payback, but there'll definitely be payback. Right? No question. What level? Can't answer. I don't think it's gonna be good. Interesting. And someone in Austria, was like, this person was the head of a party, was a fascist, like was an absolute fascist, anti-Semite, and they found out he was Jewish. God's irony. Found out he was Jewish. Turned, then he started looking into what Judaism's all about. Yeah, it happens. Kind of strange, right? But it happens. It can happen, but I don't think most people that's going to happen to. I think the ones just think it, they're just looking for an excuse to hate Jews. They're in trouble. They're in serious trouble. When I say that, death penalty, no, I won't go that far. It's bad. It's very bad. Anti-Semitism is up 100%, 200%, 500%. I mean, it's insane. It's insane what's going on. But on the other hand, it's supposed to be like this and worse before the Messiah comes. So everyone agrees we're living in messianic times, right? Mentioned that yesterday or last night for me. So everyone agrees. So yeah, it's got to get worse before it gets better, right? Unfortunately. Or it's going to get so much better, everyone's going to be playing the guitar and singing Kumbaya. So that'll be great, but I don't see it. Too many terrible things going on amongst the Jewish people, within the Jewish people, right? For that to be. So, could be, we got to get knocked around more and more, before the Messiah can come. It's the way it looks. But I wouldn't say it's death penalty. Someone asks, is it correct that some souls can't survive the learning phase and they die? Could be. I think it's hard to say though. I mean, somebody, there is a learning curve. Not everyone's going to be successful in learning, but at the same time, could a person have trials and tribulations where they just sort of, check out or whatever, if they're, if they're really wicked, let's say, yeah, is it possible their soul just get obliterated? Yeah. That is definitely possible. They won't have a portion of the world to come. There definitely could be people like that. The vast majority are not like that. It'll happen to individuals. It's not going to happen among the masses. No one's really that inherently evil. There are some really bad people, I agree. So they'll be obliterated. 100%. Their soul will get obliterated. Whatever, there won't be anything left of it. God will reward them for the few mitzvahs they did in this world. That's it. But they'll totally get obliterated. I don't think most people are like that. Even anti-Semites, they're going to get totally obliterated? I don't think so. I don't think they get totally obliterated. Depends what they do, right? Depends. But there are people, again, Ramchal brings this down in Derech Hashem, that he says there are people that will get obliterated. That there'll be nothing left of their soul, they die. They die like a dog, go in the ground, zero. Don't get anything. So they'll be obliterated. Vast majority, not that bad. Again, some are, but vast majority, you're talking about, handfuls of people. You're not talking, the numbers are small. I would say, from what I know, the numbers are not going to be that big. Again, there are a lot of bad people out there, but, some of them will get obliterated, and the others won't. Yeah. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah, you got Hitler, you got JC, you got Titus, you got a lot of bad people. You got a lot of bad people that are going to suffer forever. JC suffering forever. Titus suffering forever. Right? Other people, yeah, they could suffer forever. True. Hitler, I'm sure he's suffering day in and day out. I don't think he just got one punishment there. I think he's probably suffering for a long time. All these people. Stalin, I don't think he's in a good place. Pol Pot, Gaddafi, any of these people, yeah, they did what they did. God didn't stop them, allowed them to do it. But yeah, they're in big trouble. They're in huge trouble. It's not enough just to obliterate them. They have to suffer. They have to suffer a lot. Suffering a lot doesn't mean there's going to be anything left in their soul. Doesn't mean they're going to have a portion of the world to come. God's going to obliterate. He's just going to make them suffer over and over and over. Right? However long, don't know. But can only imagine. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop here. I do this every Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me at Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email at rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wish everyone a good